Koska, here with How To AmpGuard again. Today we're going to cover how to set up for leather carving. Also here with me is Coda, my lovely camera monkey.
Hi.
Everyone say hi to Coda. And like I said, today we're going to teach you about how to set up for leather carving, which is probably one of the things that is the most neglected thing about doing leather carving. The second being using your swivel knife properly, which will be in our next video. Okay, well the first thing I need to tell you is what type of leather you can use for leather carving. This here is vegetable tanned leather. It's about 4-ounce thickness. An ounce is a 1/16 of an inch. And vegetable tan leather is the only type of leather that you can do leather carving on. Because in order to do leather carving, the leather needs to be able to absorb water. This here is an example of dry leather. This is fairly flexible for its thickness, but it's fairly stiff and of course dry feeling. And what you would normally do in order to do leather carving is you would soak down your leather pretty well front and back. Now, most people at this point would start carving, and that's a mistake. Because you don't want your leather to look like this. Wet leather that is soaked in, as you can see, is very easily folded, and it's actually too flexible to carve effectively. You don't want that. What you do is you take this leather and you soak it very well and you let it sit. What will happen is you'll get a piece of leather like this, which looks dry, but is actually cold and moist feeling to the touch. This is ideal for when you want to carve leather. And this technique is called casing the leather. Now, for particularly thick pieces, what you can do is you can give it a very good soak and put it in your fridge overnight. So that way the water gets pulled into the core of the leather, which is where you really need it to be in order to carve effectively. Now, the next thing that you do in order to carve your leather is you transfer your pattern. Now, in order to transfer a pattern, you just have a pattern like this. This is just a random one that I sketched out. And you put it over your impeccably cased leather. And I'm just going to do this here. And you just very lightly press. You really don't need to press hard at all. Your instinct will be to press down. But you really don't want to press any harder than you normally write when you're writing casually, not, of course, grumpily writing. And the end result will be something like this. I'm not sure if the camera can pick that up, but you see some very faint lines outside of those water droplets, of course. And that's the ideal way to transfer your leather, or transfer patterns to your leather. This, for those of you who don't know, is a product called tracing film. It's just a very thin plastic film. Any sort of thin plastic film that is tear resistant will work. I have a friend who uses X-ray blanks because he has access to them. But frankly, anything flexible but not easily torn will work just fine for transferring your patterns. Now, the next tool you'll need is a swivel knife. This one's mine here. And I'm not going to show you how to use a swivel knife today, but I'm going to tell you about a swivel knife, how to set it up so it's comfortable for you, and how to hone it and maintain it. The next video will be about how to use it. This here is your best friend. It's my best friend. Now, swivel knives, this one's an ergonomic one, which if you have any sort of problems with your hands or arthritis, that sort of thing, I really recommend a swivel knife like this, because if you're working on a larger piece of carving, you might be swivel knifing for extended periods of time. Now, an ergonomic one like this has a way to loosen it, to adjust the height. Now, ideally, your hand should be making this shape when you're using your swivel knife. A lot of people have their swivel knife too short, so it makes too squishy of a space in here, and that causes their hand to get tired very easily. Your index finger should be extended, well, decently, as you can see here, about that far above your other fingers. About that far above your other fingers. And that's the most comfortable in the saddle here for when you're doing long-term cuts. Now, this blade here in the swivel knife is what's called an angle blade. This one's made with ceramics. There are many different types of blades. In addition to the ceramic blade, you can also commonly get steel blades, which is what this one here is, or this one, which is just a higher quality steel. When you buy your swivel knife, you'll likely get a blade like this. These cost just a couple dollars to replace, but they're kind of a pain to maintain. You have to sharpen them frequently, which you have to do at the proper angle, and it takes practice. And frankly, a large blade like this, which is called a universal blade, is difficult to handle. It's because it's so chunky and because it has just a 90-degree angle as opposed to that closer to 60-degree angle. It's harder to handle, especially for a beginner. I do recommend switching to an angle blade, even right off the bat, as it's much easier to learn with. Now, the ceramic blades like this one are far more expensive, so you may not want to invest in something like that until you feel that you're going to actually enjoy doing leather carving and will be doing it frequently. Because these, for instance, probably less than $10 as a whole, whereas this one's going to be in the $30 to $40 range. Now, if you decided you're going to be a master leather carver one day, there are even more expensive blades out there than ceramic blades, like ruby blades, but they're fairly hard to get and you have to custom make them. And frankly, I'm never going to invest a few $100s into doing that. Now, the downside to something like a ceramic blade is, of course, you want to be careful with it, because if you drop it, especially on your nice hard surface that you're working on, which I work on a granite block, what happens is you're going to chip and shatter that, and that's not fun. So that brings me then to your surface, which, like I said, I work on a granite block. You can get granite or marble or any sort of hard stone, works excellently as a surface for leatherworking. Mine is about, as you can see here, about 1.5 inches thick. I found that when I used thinner pieces, because I tend to be kind of a hoss when I leatherwork sometimes, I cracked my stones. So if you tend to be a brute, a thicker stone might be for you as well. If you don't want to invest in a stone yet, a piece of I-beam or steel or rebar or train track, anything like that is usually pretty good. Or even, though it's not as effective, like one of those poly kitchen cutting boards isn't so bad. Now, if you're using something that is not as sturdy as a stone, however, you will want to work on a very sturdy table. Because if you're working on a table like your kitchen table, you're going to have a lot of bounce in your surface. And that means you're going to be losing a lot of the efficiency of your mallet strikes when we get to the mallet striking portion of this. All right, thank you. I heard the beep, I got excited.
All right.